The water was rising fast. I remember the night as if it happened yesterday. The river burst into our village, swallowing houses, animals, and everything in its path. My father grabbed my sister, Emily, pulling her to safety. I screamed his name, stretching my tiny hands out for him to pull me too. But instead of saving me, he looked into my eyes, turned away, and left me behind in the rushing flood. I thought I would die that night. Cold water filled my mouth, dragging me under. My chest burned, my arms fought, but the flood was stronger. I screamed again for my father, but all I saw was his back as he carried Emily to safety. He chose her. He left me to die. But I did not die. Somehow I survived. And years later, when I saw with my own eyes how he hurt Emily in a way no father should ever hurt his daughter, my heart turned to stone. In that moment, I promised myself I would take revenge. But you must understand, revenge does not come in a day. It grows like fire in dry grass, waiting for the right wind to spread. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when life still looked innocent, before the flood swallowed our village, and before betrayal poisoned my heart. I grew up in a poor home in a small African village. My father, John, was a hard man. He spoke little, but when he did, it was usually with anger. My mother, Grace, was gentle and kind, but her body was weak. She worked hard in the farm fields, but she was always tired. My sister Emily was 1 year younger than me. She had the softest smile, and people often said she was prettier than me. I never minded. She was my best friend, my shadow, the one who made me laugh when the nights were dark. We lived in a mud house with a leaking roof. When it rained, water poured inside like it wanted to drown us even then. But we found joy in small things, running barefoot after goats, eating roasted corn, or singing by the fire at night. I thought we were happy, though deep down, I knew something about my father was not right. He never smiled, and sometimes, when he looked at Emily, his eyes stayed too long. One afternoon, before the flood came, my mother sent me and Emily to fetch water at the stream. On the way back, we met Father on the path. He stared at Emily in a strange way that made me feel uncomfortable. I pulled Emily close, but he only grunted and walked past us. I remember whispering to her, "Stay away from him when Mama is not around." Emily laughed at me, but I did not laugh back. Life went on, with small joys and hidden fears, until the night of the flood. That day, the clouds gathered like angry spirits. The wind howled, and rain poured in sheets, harder than I had ever seen. We tried to patch the leaking roof, but the water forced its way inside. By evening, the river beside our village had risen so high that even the elders looked afraid. Mother told us to pray, but Father barked at us to keep quiet. The water soon burst through the doors, sweeping our few belongings away. Mother screamed for us to run. We rushed outside, but the water was already up to our waists. People shouted, animals cried, houses crumbled. It was as if the whole world was being swallowed. Father grabbed Emily first. I screamed, "Papa, take me too." But he didn't. He lifted Emily onto his shoulders and turned away, leaving me behind in the raging water. My mother tried to hold me, but the current tore us apart. I remember her face sinking into the darkness as the flood carried me away. I was just a child, fighting for breath, choking on mud and water. The current slammed me against a tree, and I clung to it with all my strength. The flood roared past me like a monster hungry for my soul. I prayed, "God, don't let me die." And somehow he heard me. Hours later, I was found clinging to that tree by an old fisherman named Samuel. He pulled me onto his canoe, wrapped me in his old coat, and took me to dry land. I was alive, but not the same. The next morning, I searched for my family. Many houses were gone. Many people were dead. I found Father and Emily on a hill with the survivors. Father did not even look surprised that I was alive. He only said, "Go sit down." That was all. No embrace. No tears. Not even joy. Just coldness, as if I had forced myself back from the dead when he wished I had stayed gone. From that day, something broke inside me. But what truly shattered me came years later, when I saw with my own eyes the kind of man my father truly was with Emily. And on the night I caught him, I swore I would destroy him. But before I tell you what I saw, I must tell you how life after the flood shaped me, how pain became my teacher, and how revenge began to grow in my heart like poison. Because the flood did not just drown houses, it drowned my childhood. And the next tragedy that struck my life came with even more thunder than the river itself. The scream that night was unlike any I had ever heard. It was Emily's voice, breaking the silence of our tiny house like shattered glass. I ran from my mat, heart pounding. The moonlight leaked through the cracks in the roof as I rushed toward the sound. When I reached the doorway, my whole body froze. Father was there, towering over Emily, his hand pressed against her mouth as she struggled. His eyes burned with a hunger I could not understand at first, but when I saw Emily's tears, her shaking body, and his heavy breathing, I knew. My stomach turned to stone. The father who left me to die in the flood had not saved Emily out of love. He had saved her for himself. I wanted to scream, but my voice locked in my throat. My legs shook, but I forced them to move. I grabbed the wooden stool near the wall and raised it, but before I could strike, his eyes caught mine. For a moment, everything froze, his evil face, Emily's terrified eyes, my trembling hands. Then he growled, "Go back to sleep, or you'll regret it." I dropped the stool and ran back into the darkness, but the sound of Emily's muffled cries followed me like a curse. That night, I could not sleep. I buried my face in my arms, anger eating me alive. My heart screamed, "One day, I will make him pay." But I was still young, weak, and afraid. Revenge would have to wait. Life after the flood was already hard, but after that night, it turned into a prison. Our village was broken, fields washed away, animals gone. Hunger lived in every house. The little food we had was controlled by Father. He grew colder each day, barking orders, beating us when he pleased, and blaming everyone but himself for our suffering. Mother, once gentle and kind, had become quieter after the flood. She rarely smiled. I often caught her staring into the distance, as if she carried secrets she could never share. Sometimes I wondered if she knew what Father was doing to Emily. But if she did, why did she say nothing? Fear? Helplessness? I didn't know. Emily changed too. The brightness in her smile faded. She avoided Father when she could, but when he called her, she obeyed, her eyes dropping to the floor. She stopped playing with me, stopped singing by the fire. It was as if he had stolen not just her body, but her soul. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to fight him. But every time I tried, his strength crushed mine. Once, when I shouted at him to leave her alone, he slapped me so hard I saw stars. "You should have drowned in that flood," he spat. Those words cut deeper than his hand. Still, I did not give up. I began to plan in secret. At school, I listened to stories of heroes and warriors, people who stood against evil even when it was dangerous. I began to imagine myself as one of them. At night, when the house was quiet, I whispered promises to myself. I will grow stronger. I will not let him win. Emily, however, seemed to shrink more each day. She walked like a shadow, barely eating, barely speaking. One evening, I found her sitting by the river where the flood had nearly taken my life. She stared at the water, silent tears on her cheeks. I sat beside her and took her hand. "Emily," I whispered, "why don't you tell someone? The chief? The elders?" She shook her head violently. "No one will believe us. He is our father. They will call me a liar." Her voice was so broken it made my heart ache. That was when I realized the truth. Sometimes the world does not protect the weak. Sometimes you have to become the storm yourself. The months dragged on. Father's abuse continued in the shadows, and I carried the weight of my silence like chains. But the fire inside me never died. Every time I saw Emily's tears, every time I remembered his back turning away from me in the flood, the fire grew hotter. Then came the day that changed everything again. It was market day, and the village buzzed with noise. I was helping Mother carry cassava when we heard a shout. A boy came running from the other side of the market, breathless. "The river has risen again," he cried. "It's coming for the lower fields." People panicked, leaving their goods behind. Father pushed through the crowd, dragging Emily by the wrist. I ran after them, my heart in my throat. Not another flood, I thought. Not again. We reached the riverbank, where the water was already foaming. The memory of that night years ago slammed into me like a wave. I froze, my legs shaking. But Father didn't freeze. He pulled Emily toward the river, his grip like iron. "What are you doing?" I screamed. He turned to me, his face twisted. "If the river takes her, no one will know what I have done. No one will blame me." I stared at him in disbelief. My father was about to sacrifice Emily, just as he had left me behind in the first flood. Only this time, it was not the water choosing, it was him. Rage exploded inside me. I grabbed a heavy stick from the ground and charged at him. The crowd gasped as I swung it across his back. He staggered, dropping Emily into the mud. She scrambled to my side, clutching my arm. For the first time, I stood between her and him, not as a weak child, but as a shield. My chest heaved, my hands shook, but I lifted the stick again. "If you touch her again, I swear I'll kill you," I shouted. The villagers stared in shock. Father's eyes blazed with fury, but he did not move. Not this time. Something had changed. But the story did not end there. No. That was only the beginning of my revenge. Because later that night, Father came back for us. The moon was high when I heard footsteps outside our hut. The air was thick with silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I shook Emily awake, pressing a finger to my lips. She nodded, fear already filling her eyes. Then the door creaked open. Father stood there, a shadow in the doorway, holding a knife. "I warned you," he whispered. His voice was calm, too calm. That was when I knew something terrible was about to happen. Emily gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. The knife gleamed in the moonlight as he stepped inside. And in that moment, I realized the flood had not been the worst night of my life. The worst night was about to begin. The knife glinted in Father's hand as he stepped into the room. The moonlight painted his face in shadows, but his eyes burned with fire. Emily whimpered, her fingers gripping my arm like claws. My chest rose and fell so fast I thought I would faint. "Both of you think you can shame me in front of the whole village," he whispered, his voice as cold as the blade he carried. "You think you can defy me? Tonight, you will learn who I am." I wanted to scream for Mother, but I knew she was too weak to stop him. I wanted to run, but the door was blocked by his tall frame. My only choice was to stand my ground. I pushed Emily behind me. My hands trembled, but I said, "You won't touch her again." He smirked. "You? A little rat? I should have let the flood finish you that night." His words stabbed me deeper than the knife could. Rage exploded inside me. My eyes darted around the room until I spotted a clay pot near the fire. Without thinking, I grabbed it and hurled it at his head. The pot shattered on his shoulder, and he stumbled with a growl of pain. "Run!" I screamed to Emily. We bolted past him, slipping on the muddy floor, our bare feet pounding the ground as we fled into the night. The village was silent, the air thick with fear. Behind us, Father's footsteps thundered like drums of death. We ran toward the forest, branches slapping our faces, thorns cutting our feet. The moon guided us, but every shadow looked like his hand reaching for us. Emily sobbed. "Where do we go? Where do we go?" "Just keep running," I said, though my legs were already burning. Finally, we reached the edge of the forest and collapsed under a giant tree. My lungs felt like fire, my heart hammering. Emily curled into my arms, shaking. For a moment, all I could hear was the pounding of our breaths and the cries of crickets. But then, in the distance, his voice carried through the night. "You can't hide forever." I held Emily tighter. Revenge was no longer just a dream in my heart. It was a promise written in blood. The next morning, We returned cautiously to the village. Our hut was quiet, father gone. Mother sat inside, her face pale, her hands trembling. When she saw us, tears streamed down her cheeks. "Where did you go?" "I thought he killed you," she whispered. I told her everything. How he had come with the knife, how we ran, how he nearly caught us. She closed her eyes as if the truth was too heavy to bear. "You must not fight him," she said weakly. "He is your father." I stared at her, disbelief burning in my chest. A father does not do what he does to Emily. A father does not try to kill his children. Her silence was an answer I did not want. It was then I realized Mother was broken too. She was trapped by fear, unable to protect us. If we wanted freedom, I would have to fight for myself. Days turned into weeks, and Father's cruelty grew sharper. He beat me whenever I crossed him, and Emily whenever she refused him. But I endured. Every bruise was fuel. Every scar was a reminder that one day I would end his reign of terror. I began to train in secret. I lifted stones, carried logs, practiced swinging sticks until my arms ached. I learned to run faster, climb trees, sharpen my senses. Emily watched me, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "Why are you doing this?" she asked one evening. "Because one day," I said, "I will stop him. And when I do, he will never hurt you again." She hugged me, her tears soaking my shoulder. That hug was my strength. But Father was clever. He sensed my growing defiance. One night, he cornered Emily near the stream. I followed quietly, hiding in the tall grass. I saw him raise his hand to strike her when she resisted his touch. That was the moment I could no longer wait. I charged from the grass, slamming into him with all my strength. He fell back into the mud, shocked by my boldness. Emily scrambled away as I grabbed a rock and held it high above his head. For a moment, I almost brought it down, almost ended it right there. But then Emily screamed, "No, don't do it." Her voice cut through my rage. I froze, the rock trembling in my hands. Father crawled to his feet, his eyes blazing with murder. "You dare raise your hand against me?" he roared. He lunged forward, knocking the rock from my grasp. His fists rained down on me, each blow like thunder. My body crumpled under his strength, my vision blurred. Emily tried to pull him off, but he shoved her so hard she fell against a tree, crying out in pain. He pressed his hand around my throat, squeezing until the world began to fade. I thought I would die again, just as I had almost died in the flood. But then, from the darkness, a voice shouted, "Stop." We all froze. An old man stepped forward from the shadows. It was Samuel, the fisherman who had saved me during the flood years ago. His eyes burned with fury as he raised his walking stick. "John," Samuel roared, "if you harm these children again, the whole village will know what you've done." Father hesitated, his grip loosening. His chest heaved as he glared at Samuel. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not of me, not of Emily, but of exposure. He released me, shoving me to the ground. "This isn't over," he growled, before storming away into the night. Emily crawled to me, her hands shaking as she touched my face. I coughed, my throat burning, but I was alive. Samuel knelt beside us, his old eyes filled with sadness. "I knew something was wrong," he said softly. "But now I see the truth, and I will not stay silent." Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in years. Maybe we were not alone. Maybe justice was possible. But deep down, I knew Father would not stop. Not until someone stopped him. And that night, as I lay on the floor, bruised and aching, I whispered a new promise to myself. The next time he comes for Emily, I will be ready. And I will not hesitate. Because now, the war had truly begun. And the next attack would not come with fists or words. It would come with fire. The night smelled of smoke before I even opened my eyes. I coughed, my throat burning, and when I looked up, I saw orange flames licking the walls of our hut. Emily screamed beside me, her face glowing in the fiery light. Father was standing in the doorway, a torch in his hand, his face twisted into a mask of hatred. "If I can't control you," he snarled, "then I will destroy you." The fire roared, swallowing the dry grass roof, sparks falling like angry stars. Emily clutched my arm, sobbing. Mother lay in the corner, coughing, too weak to stand. My mind raced. If we didn't escape now, we would all burn alive. I grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward the back wall. The smoke stung my eyes, but I spotted a hole in the mud wall where the flood had once weakened it. "Here!" I shouted. We kicked at the hole, mud crumbling under our feet. The wall gave way just enough for Emily to squeeze through. I pushed her hard, coughing so violently I thought my chest would burst. Then I dragged Mother, her frail body trembling, through the gap. Just as I tried to crawl out, Father stormed forward, grabbing me by the leg. His grip was iron, his eyes wild. "You will die here," he roared. I kicked wildly, my foot connecting with his face. He howled in pain, and I wriggled free, tumbling onto the wet earth outside. Emily pulled me up as the hut collapsed behind us, flames leaping into the night sky. The village gathered, whispering, their faces pale in the glow of fire. But no one dared stop Father as he stood among the flames, his torch still in hand. No one spoke. They only watched, as if fear had silenced them all. Samuel appeared again, his old eyes blazing. He pointed his stick at Father. "You will answer for this," he said. "No man has the right to burn his own family alive." But Father only spat on the ground. "Stay out of this, old man, or I'll finish you too." He stormed away into the darkness, leaving the ashes of our home behind. The following days were filled with sorrow. We had no house, no food, nothing but the clothes on our backs. Mother grew weaker, coughing blood, her body wasting away. Emily tried to smile, but her eyes were always red from crying. We stayed with Samuel, who gave us shelter in his little hut by the river. He was kind, sharing his food and teaching me how to fish. "Strength is not only in muscles," he told me one day. "It is in the courage to stand when no one else will." I listened, storing his words deep in my heart, for I knew the day would come when I would need every ounce of strength. But peace never lasted. Father returned again and again, prowling the edges of Samuel's hut like a wolf. Sometimes, we would wake at night to hear his voice calling Emily's name. Sometimes, we found dead animals left at our door, his warning that he was never far. Emily grew thinner, her laughter completely gone. One night, as we lay on the mat, she whispered to me, "Why doesn't God take him away? Why does he let him live?" I had no answer, only a promise. One day he will pay. I swear it. Then came the day Mother died. Her sickness grew worse until she could no longer move. We held her hands as she whispered her last words. "Take care of each other. Don't let his darkness destroy you." Her eyes closed, and she was gone. Emily collapsed in my arms, sobbing until her body shook. I held her tightly, my tears mixing with hers. Mother's death felt like the final blow, but in my heart, it became the final spark. Father had taken everything from us, our childhood, our peace, even our mother. I vowed that day that I would not rest until justice was done. But Father was not finished with his cruelty. The night after Mother's burial, he came again. We were sitting quietly in Samuel's hut when the door suddenly burst open. Father stormed inside, his face twisted with rage, a machete in his hand. Samuel tried to block him with his stick, but Father swung the blade, slicing the wood in half. Emily screamed, clutching me. Father's eyes glowed like fire as he raised the machete high. "This ends tonight," he roared. The blade came down with deadly force. And in that instant I knew the time for running was over. The time for revenge had finally come. What would you have done if you were in my place that night? Would you have stayed silent or fought back? Tell me in the comments, because your voice matters. If this story touched your heart, give it a like. It helps more people hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next chapter will leave you speechless. You don't want to miss it. The machete flashed in the dim light as Father swung it down toward me. Time slowed, the blade catching the glow of the fire, the air hissing as it sliced downward. Emily screamed my name, and Samuel threw himself forward, raising the broken half of his stick. The blade struck wood with a deafening crack. Sparks flew as the stick splintered in Samuel's trembling hands. Father shoved him aside with one violent push, sending the old man crashing into the wall. My blood froze as the machete rose again, this time aimed straight at my head. I did the only thing my body knew. I rolled. The blade cut through the mat where I had been lying, shredding it in two. My chest pounded, my breath shallow, as Father pulled the machete free from the floor with a growl. "You won't escape me this time," he roared. Emily clutched me, tears streaming down her face. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the corner, but Father blocked the way. His shadow loomed over us, his breathing heavy, his face twisted with rage. It was then that Samuel, with all the strength left in his frail body, grabbed a clay pot from the shelf and smashed it against Father's back. The sound echoed through the hut as the shards scattered across the floor. Father staggered, cursing, the machete clattering from his hand. "Run." Samuel croaked, blood trickling from his mouth. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Emily and dragged her toward the door. Father lunged for the machete, his fingers brushing the handle, but we slipped out into the night. The cold air hit my face as we ran barefoot through the dirt, the moon guiding our way. Behind us, Father's roar split the silence. "You can run, but I will find you." We fled to the forest once again, hearts pounding, lungs burning. Emily sobbed quietly as we hid among the trees, clutching each other in the darkness. For hours, we sat there, shivering, waiting for footsteps that never came. By morning, Samuel found us. His body was weak, his clothes torn, but he was alive. "Children," he whispered, "you cannot stay here. He will never stop hunting you. You must find safety somewhere far away." His words cut deep because I knew he was right. But where could we go? We had no family outside the village, no money, no strength to travel. Still, the thought of staying filled me with dread. I remembered the machete flashing, the flames devouring our hut, the knife glinting in the moonlight. Father would kill us if we remained. That was the truth. So, we decided to leave. The journey was harsh. We walked for days, hiding from anyone who looked suspicious, eating wild fruits and drinking from streams. Our feet blistered, our clothes grew ragged, but the thought of freedom pushed us forward. Emily often stumbled, her body weak from years of fear and hunger. I carried her when I could, whispering promises into her ear. "One day, this will end. One day, he will pay for everything." At night, we huddled under trees, shivering from the cold. Sometimes, I thought of Mother, wishing she were there to comfort us. Other times, I thought of Father, his face haunting my dreams, his voice echoing in my ears. "You should have drowned in the flood." Every morning, I woke with one thought: revenge. It kept me moving, kept me alive. After many days, we reached another village. It was small but lively, filled with people who sang as they worked in the fields. Samuel had told us about it before we left. He said the chief there was a just man, one who hated cruelty. We approached the village with trembling legs. An old woman noticed us first. She gasped when she saw our ragged clothes and thin faces. "Children, where have you come from?" she asked. I bowed my head, my voice breaking. "From the other side of the river. Please, we need help." The villagers welcomed us. They gave us food, water, and a small hut to stay in. For the first time in years, Emily smiled faintly as she ate roasted yam. Tears rolled down my cheeks at the sight. Maybe we had finally found safety. But safety was an illusion, because even here, Father's shadow stretched. Weeks passed, and we began to heal. Emily grew stronger, her cheeks less hollow. I worked in the fields, earning the respect of the villagers. Life began to feel almost normal. But inside me, the fire of revenge burned hotter every day. Then one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, I heard a voice that froze my blood. "Have you seen two children? A boy and a girl?" I turned and saw him. Father, standing at the edge of the village, his clothes dusty, his eyes wild, a machete still hanging from his belt. My heart dropped into my stomach. He had found us. Emily saw him too and gasped, her face turning pale. She clutched my arm, whispering, "No, not here, not again." The villagers looked at him warily, sensing his darkness. The chief stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked. Father smiled, but it was a smile filled with poison. "I am their father. They belong to me." Emily shook her head, tears spilling down her face. "No," she cried. "He is not a father. He is a monster." The crowd murmured, their eyes shifting between us and him. The chief narrowed his eyes. "If what she says is true, you'll not take them." Father's smile vanished. He gripped the machete on his belt, his knuckles white. "You will not stop me," he snarled. The air grew heavy, silence wrapping around us like a noose. The villagers backed away, afraid. Emily buried her face in my chest, trembling. I looked at the chief, then at Father, then at the machete gleaming in his hand. And in that moment, I knew the truth. There would be no peace until one of us was gone forever. Father took a step forward, raising the machete high. And this time, I did not run. The machete glistened in the fading sunlight as Father stepped forward, his shadow stretching long across the village square. My heart hammered against my chest, but my legs stayed rooted to the ground. For years I had run, but now I realized something. Running would never end his cruelty. This had to stop. Emily's grip on my arm trembled, her nails digging into my skin. "Don't, please, he'll kill you," she whispered. But my eyes never left Father. His gaze was a fire of rage, his lips curled into a snarl. The villagers had gathered around us, murmuring nervously, unsure if they should intervene. The chief stood still, his staff planted firmly in the earth, watching with sharp eyes. "You belong to me." Father's voice thundered. "Both of you. No one will take what is mine." His words sliced through me. We weren't his. We never were. We were only his victims. I clenched my fists. "No," I said, my voice shaking but strong. "We don't belong to you. Not anymore." The villagers gasped at my defiance. Father's face twisted in fury. He lunged forward, swinging the machete with both hands. The blade cut the air with a sharp whistle, aiming straight for my head. I ducked just in time. The blade missed me by inches, slicing into the wooden post of a hut behind me. Splinters flew as Father yanked the machete free, his chest heaving. The villagers scattered, screaming. Some women grabbed their children and fled. Others stood frozen, caught between fear and shock. The chief raised his staff. "Stop this madness. This is a place of peace," he bellowed. But Father only laughed, a deep, hollow sound that made the hairs on my neck rise. "Peace," he spat. "Peace is for the weak. These children are mine, and I will take them whether you like it or not." He swung again, this time lower, aiming for my side. I jumped back, stumbling over the dirt. My legs shook, my breath ragged. Emily screamed, her tiny body clinging to my arm. I knew then I had to fight back. I looked around desperately for something, anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on a wooden hoe leaning against a nearby hut. Without thinking, I grabbed it, holding it up like a spear. Father laughed again. "You think a stick will stop me?" He charged, machete raised. Our weapons clashed with a deafening crack. The impact rattled my bones, nearly knocking the hoe from my hands. But I held firm. Emily cried out, "Please stop. Please." Her voice cracked, but it was drowned out by the clash of steel and wood. The villagers began to chant quietly, urging me on. "Stand your ground, don't let him win." Their voices grew louder with each clash, fueling me with strength I didn't know I had. Father swung again and again, his strikes heavy and relentless. I blocked with the hoe, but the wood began to splinter. Sweat poured down my face, my arms trembling with each impact. Finally, the hoe cracked in two. The pieces fell to the ground, leaving me defenseless. Father grinned wickedly. "Now you're finished." He raised the machete high, ready to deliver the final blow. But then, a hand grabbed his arm. The chief. With surprising strength for his age, the chief held Father's wrist in a vice-like grip. "No man will spill blood in this village without facing judgment," he declared. The villagers erupted in shouts of courage. Some rushed forward, grabbing Father's other arm, wrestling him down. Father thrashed wildly, spitting curses, but the villagers held firm. "Release me," he roared. "They are mine. They belong to me." The chief struck the ground with his staff. "No. They belong to no one. They are free." Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in years, someone had spoken the truth. We were free. But Father's eyes met mine, and in them I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Hatred. Burning, endless hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I will come back for you." The villagers tied Father's hands with thick ropes. The chief ordered that he be locked in a small hut under guard until dawn, when they would decide his fate. That night, I couldn't sleep. Neither could Emily. We huddled together, listening to the distant sound of Father's curses echoing in the darkness. Each word was a blade cutting into my heart. Samuel, weak but alive, sat with us. "He is trapped," he whispered. "The village will not let him harm you again." But I shook my head. "He's like a snake. Even caged, he's dangerous." I couldn't shake the fear. What if he escaped? What if the villagers decided to let him go? What if tomorrow, everything went back to the nightmare we had lived for years? Emily buried her face in my chest. "I don't want to see him again," she sobbed. I stroked her hair, but I had no answers. Only dread. At dawn, the entire village gathered in the square. The chief stood tall, his staff gleaming in the sunlight. Father was dragged out, his hands bound, his face bruised but still filled with venom. "This man has brought violence and fear," the chief declared. He raised his hand against his own children. "Such evil cannot walk freely." The villagers shouted in agreement. Some demanded his exile. Others wanted harsher punishment. Father smirked. "You think you can judge me? I am their father. My blood runs in their veins. No one can separate that." The chief turned to me. "You have suffered the most. What do you say should be done with him?" All eyes turned to me. My chest tightened. The weight of justice pressed down like a mountain. Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes wide with fear. I swallowed hard. Every part of me wanted revenge. To see him suffer as we had suffered. But another part of me, a small, trembling part, longed for peace. I opened my mouth to speak. But before a word could leave my lips, chaos erupted. A scream tore through the crowd. One of the guards fell to the ground, blood streaming from his neck. Father had a hidden blade, sharp and deadly, concealed in his clothes. He slashed the second guard across the chest and ripped the ropes from his wrists. Gasps filled the air. Women shrieked, children wailed. Father stood tall, wild-eyed, his blade dripping with blood. "You cannot cage me," he bellowed. "I will take what is mine, even if I must bathe this village in blood." The crowd scattered in panic. The chief raised his staff again, but Father lunged, slashing the blade toward him. Emily screamed, clutching me tighter. My body froze as Father's eyes locked on us again, his smile stretching wide. "This ends tonight," he snarled. And with a roar, he charged straight at us. Father's footsteps pounded against the dirt, the blade flashing in his hand, his face twisted with rage. My breath caught in my throat. Emily clung to me like a frightened bird, her screams piercing the chaos. Time slowed. I could see the horror in the villagers' eyes as they scattered. The chief tried to block Father's path with his staff, but Father shoved him aside like he was nothing. Dust rose around his feet as he came closer and closer. I wanted to run. Every part of me screamed, "Run." But my legs refused to move. My body trembled, rooted to the spot. Emily's tiny fingers dug into my arm, begging for safety. Father swung the blade down toward us. I threw myself sideways, dragging Emily with me. The blade sliced the air where we had stood a second before. Sparks flew as it struck a rock, sending a sharp clang through the square. Father roared, furious at missing his mark. He turned, eyes wild, and charged again. "Someone stop him," the chief shouted. But fear kept the villagers at bay. No one wanted to face a man who fought like a mad beast. I scrambled to my feet, pulling Emily up. My eyes darted around, searching for a weapon, for anything that could give me a chance. My gaze fell on a heavy wooden drum used in ceremonies. Without thinking, I pushed Emily behind me and lifted it with both hands. Father lunged, blade raised. I swung the drum with all my strength. The wood slammed into his side with a dull thud. He staggered but did not fall. His eyes burned hotter, his fury feeding his strength. "You dare strike me?" he bellowed. "Ungrateful child. I gave you life." My voice cracked but held steady. "And you tried to take it." I swung again, but this time he caught the drum with one hand and wrenched it from me, hurling it across the square. It smashed into the ground, shattering into pieces. Emily cried out, "Please stop, Father. Please." But he didn't hear her. His blade came down again, and I barely dodged, feeling the wind of it brush past my cheek. The villagers finally began to move. A group of men rushed forward with sticks and hoes, shouting to distract him. Father snarled, slashing at them wildly. One man was cut across the arm, another stumbled back with blood on his face. The rest retreated, fear overpowering courage. The chief shouted, "Hold the line. Do not let him harm the children." But his voice was swallowed by the screams. Samuel appeared suddenly, limping but determined, clutching a long spear. His face was pale from weakness, but his eyes blazed with fury. "Over here, coward," Samuel shouted. Father spun around, eyes narrowing. "You again?" Samuel lifted the spear. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." Father roared and charged at him. Samuel braced himself, holding the spear steady. For a moment, hope surged through me. Maybe Samuel could stop him. But Father was too fast. At the last second, he sidestepped and struck Samuel's shoulder with the blade. Samuel cried out, collapsing to the ground, the spear falling from his grasp. "No!" I screamed. Father stood over Samuel, raising the blade for the final strike. Something inside me broke. Fear turned to fire. Trembling turned to strength. Before I even realized what I was doing, I lunged forward and grabbed the spear. My arms shook as I lifted it, but I aimed straight at Father's chest. With all my strength, I thrust. The spear pierced his side. Father let out a guttural roar, staggering back. His blade slipped from his fingers and clattered to the ground. Blood spread across his shirt, dark and thick. The crowd gasped in shock. Emily screamed, covering her eyes. Father's eyes met mine.
Shock, rage, pain.
"You, my own child." His voice was a broken growl. I trembled, the spear still in my hands. "You left me to die once. But this time, I survived." He fell to his knees, clutching the wound. For a moment, it seemed like it was over. The villagers began to murmur, some daring to step closer, others praying aloud. But Father wasn't finished. With a sudden surge of strength, he ripped the spear from his side, blood spraying. His face twisted into a grotesque smile. "You think this will stop me?" he hissed. He lunged forward, blood dripping down his body, and tackled me to the ground. The spear fell from my grasp. His hands wrapped around my throat, squeezing tight. I gasped, clawing at his fingers, my lungs burning. The world blurred around me. Emily screamed my name, her voice faint in my ears. Father's face loomed above me, his teeth bared, eyes blazing. "If I die, I'm taking you with me." Blackness began to close in. My chest felt like it would burst. And then, Emily struck him. She had grabbed the blade he had dropped. With both hands, she drove it into his back. Father roared in agony, releasing my throat. I coughed violently, air rushing back into my lungs. Emily stood frozen, the blade buried deep in his body, her small hands shaking uncontrollably. Father staggered, blood pouring from the new wound. He turned slowly, staring at Emily with wide, furious eyes. "You," he whispered. "Even you betray me?" Emily burst into sobs, dropping the blade. I just wanted you to stop hurting us. Father's knees buckled. He swayed, fighting to stay upright. For a moment, I thought he would collapse. But instead, he let out a chilling laugh, low and broken. You think this is the end? No, this is only the beginning. He stumbled toward Emily, his hands outstretched, blood dripping with every step. I tried to rise, but my body was weak, my throat burning from his grip. The villagers stood frozen, too terrified to move. Emily screamed, backing away as Father dragged himself toward her, his eyes burning with unrelenting hatred. And then, with a sudden burst of strength, he lunged at her. Father's body lurched forward like a wounded animal, blood pouring from his wounds, but his hands still reached for Emily. His eyes glowed with a terrifying madness, his mouth stretched into a grimace that looked more beast than man. Emily screamed, stumbling backward, her bare feet kicking up dust. Her small frame trembled as she tried to run, but Father's long arms clawed through the air, desperate to drag her down with him. No, I croaked, my voice hoarse from his choking grip. My body was still weak, my chest heaving, but I forced myself to my feet. The villagers shouted in panic, some urging Emily to run, others frozen in horror. No one dared step between them. Father's presence was like a curse. His madness kept everyone at bay. Emily tripped on a stone and fell hard, scraping her knees. She cried out, trying to crawl away, but Father's shadow fell over her. His blood-stained hands reached down. I staggered forward, every muscle screaming in pain. Emily. Father's fingers brushed her arm. But before he could seize her, Samuel, bleeding, broken, but still alive, threw himself between them. With a roar of defiance, he tackled Father to the ground. The two men crashed into the dirt, Samuel's fists striking wildly, Father snarling like a cornered animal. Blood sprayed from both of them as they rolled, each blow heavier than the last. Run, Emily, Samuel shouted through gritted teeth. Emily scrambled to her feet and darted toward me. I caught her in my arms, holding her tight, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. But my relief was short-lived. Father's strength was monstrous. Even with his wounds, he pushed Samuel off and slammed him to the ground. With a guttural roar, he grabbed a broken spearhead from the dirt and raised it high. Die, he howled. I screamed. No. Before he could strike, the chief hurled his staff. It spun through the air and struck Father squarely in the face. The impact sent him stumbling backward, the spearhead falling from his grasp. The villagers erupted into cheers of courage. At last, the spell of fear that had held them broke. Men and women surged forward, shouting and brandishing sticks, hoes, and stones. End this madness, the chief bellowed. Father staggered to his feet, his face smeared with blood, his chest heaving. His eyes darted around wildly as the villagers closed in. You think you can stop me? He roared. I will never be stopped. He lunged for another weapon, but the villagers swarmed him. Dozens of hands grabbed at his arms, his legs, dragging him down. He thrashed, cursed, bit, and kicked, but the weight of the crowd finally forced him to the ground. Dust rose in thick clouds as they pinned him. His screams echoed like those of a dying beast. Bind him tight, the chief commanded. Ropes were thrown over him, tying his hands, his legs, binding him so tightly he could barely move. Still, he writhed, his eyes burning with undying hatred. This isn't over, he spat. I will haunt you all. My blood will curse this land. At last, silence fell. Father lay bound in the dirt, his chest rising and falling heavily, his body broken but not defeated. I clutched Emily to my chest, trembling from head to toe. Samuel, battered and bloodied, leaned against two villagers who held him upright. The chief stood tall, his staff in hand. His voice boomed across the square. This man has brought nothing but pain and destruction. His own children have shed blood to defend themselves. His madness has no place among us. The villagers cheered, their voices rising in unison. For the first time, I felt something stronger than fear. Hope. But deep inside, A seed of dread still lingered. I knew Father. I knew the fire in his eyes. Ropes couldn't hold a man like him forever. That night, the village celebrated what they thought was victory. Fires burned brightly, drums echoed through the air, and songs of courage filled the night sky. Women danced, children laughed, and men drank in relief. But I could not celebrate. I sat apart, Emily resting in my lap, Samuel lying nearby with his wounds bandaged. My eyes were fixed on the hut where Father was being kept under guard. His shouts had quieted, but I knew his silence was more dangerous than his noise. Emily stirred, whispering, "Is it really over?" I stroked her hair gently. "I don't know, Emily. I just don't know." She buried her face against me, trembling. Samuel coughed, his voice weak but steady. "You saved us."
Twice.
"Don't doubt yourself." But I shook my head.
He's not finished.
"I can feel it." The chief approached quietly, his eyes heavy with wisdom. "Child," he said, "your father has been broken. His power is gone. Rest now." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the nightmare was finally over. But in the stillness of the night, I could almost hear Father's voice whispering through the darkness, "This isn't the end." Hours passed. The village fell silent. The fires burned low, leaving only embers glowing in the dark. I drifted in and out of restless sleep, haunted by dreams of blood and water, of Father's face rising from the flood. Suddenly, a scream pierced the night. I jolted awake, my heart racing. Emily stirred, rubbing her eyes. Samuel groaned, trying to sit up. The scream came again, this time louder, filled with terror. Then came shouts. The sound of running feet. The clash of weapons. I grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her close, my stomach twisting in fear. The guards. Something had happened. I rushed out of the hut, my bare feet slapping the dirt. The villagers were awake, their faces pale with panic, torches flaring in the darkness. And then I saw it. The hut where Father had been bound was in flames. Fire licked at the roof, smoke billowing into the night sky. The guards lay sprawled in the dirt, motionless, blood pooling beneath them. The ropes. The bindings. The man who had been defeated only hours ago gone. The crowd erupted in screams. Some tried to put out the fire, others fled in terror. The chief stood still, his face pale, his staff trembling in his hands. "He's escaped," he whispered. My blood ran cold. Emily clung to me, her tiny body shaking. Samuel stumbled to my side, his face etched with fear. From the shadows beyond the flames, a voice rose, low, mocking, filled with venom. "You thought you could break me," Father's voice growled. "But I am still here. And now none of you are safe." The crowd froze. Every torch, every flame, flickered in the wind. And then, from the darkness, Father stepped forward. His wounds were raw, his body smeared with blood and ash, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. In his hand, he held a torch blazing with fire. He raised it high, his laughter chilling the night. "I will burn this village to the ground," he roared. "And I will take what is mine." The flames crackled high into the night, painting the sky red as Father raised the torch, his laughter echoing through the village square. His bloodied figure looked almost inhuman, like a spirit risen from the underworld. "You will all pay," he roared. "This land, this village, my children. You thought you could take them from me? Tonight, I take everything back." The villagers screamed, scattering in every direction. Mothers clutched their children, men shouted orders, but chaos swallowed their voices. The smell of burning would fill the air as sparks rained down. I clutched Emily to my chest, my heart pounding. Samuel limped to my side, leaning heavily on a stick, his face pale, but his eyes locked on Father. "He'll destroy everything," Samuel muttered. "We can't let him." But fear still chained my legs. The image of Father rising again and again, no matter how much blood he shed, no matter how tightly he was bound, it haunted me. Could anyone truly stop him? Father turned, his torch aimed at another hut. The flames leapt higher, devouring straw and wood. People wailed as smoke thickened, filling the night with choking heat. No more running, I whispered to myself. It ends tonight. I placed Emily in the arms of an older woman fleeing past us.
Take her.
Keep her safe. Emily screamed, reaching for me.
No. Don't leave me.
Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself to smile. I'll come back for you. I promise. The woman carried her away into the shadows as I turned back to face Father. My hands trembled, but my heart grew steady. Father, I shouted over the roar of the fire. He spun around, eyes wild. His twisted smile stretched across his blood-streaked face. Ah, my brave little survivor. Finally ready to face me? I swallowed hard. I'm not afraid of you anymore. His laughter was sharp and cruel. Not afraid?
You should be.
I am your blood. You cannot kill what lives inside you. But I stepped forward, voice firm. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does. And you gave us none. The chief appeared beside me, staff in hand, his eyes blazing with fury. This man has cursed our peace long enough. Together, we end him. Villagers, emboldened by his words, began to gather behind us, armed with stones, spears, and clubs. Fear still lingered in their faces, but courage burned through it. Father's grin faltered as he saw the crowd. Still, he raised the torch higher. Come closer and burn with me. Before he could strike, Samuel lunged forward, tackling Father from the side. The torch flew from his hand, rolling across the dirt. Father roared, fists flying, but Samuel held on with every ounce of his strength. Now, the chief shouted. The villagers surged forward. They swarmed Father, weapons striking, fists pounding. Dust rose as he thrashed and screamed, his voice like thunder, his strength monstrous even in his broken body. But this time, he could not rise again. I grabbed the fallen torch and hurled it into the burning hut, feeding the flames. The fire spread quickly, swallowing the square in light. Villagers pulled back, dragging Father into the center of the inferno. He struggled, his voice a guttural roar. You think fire will kill me? I am the fire. His eyes locked on mine one final time.
Hatred. Rage.
And something else, fear. I stepped closer, tears streaming down my face. This is not revenge. This is justice.
For me.
For Emily. For every wound you gave us. The villagers shoved him into the heart of the flames. His screams tore through the night, terrible and haunting, until they were swallowed by the roar of the fire. We watched as the flames consumed him, his shadow twisting against the firelight before vanishing forever. Silence fell. Only the crackle of fire and the sound of weeping remained. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing. Samuel knelt beside me, his arm around my shoulders. The chief raised his staff high, his voice solemn. The curse has ended. This night will be remembered, not for the man who brought destruction, but for the children who survived him. The villagers bowed their heads in respect. For the first time, I felt the weight lift from my chest. Father was gone. The nightmare was over. Emily ran to me, breaking free from the old woman's grasp. She threw herself into my arms, crying into my chest. I held her tight, whispering, "It's over. You're safe now." Days later, the village rebuilt what was burned. Homes were restored, laughter slowly returned, and the shadows of fear began to fade. But in my heart, scars remained. I often wondered why Father chose to save Emily in the flood, but left me to die. I never found an answer. But I learned something greater. Survival is not about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself. I chose to live. I chose to fight. I chose to protect the people I loved. And in the end, I chose to let go of the hatred that had once chained me. If you were in my place, would you have forgiven my father, or would you have taken the same stand I did? Tell me in the comments below. I want to hear your voice. Don't forget to like this video if the story touched your heart. It really helps more people discover it. And subscribe with the bell on, because more powerful grandma stories are coming your way. You won't want to miss the next one.